welcome to this session of How to Tech Step. Today we're going to look at how to install a guest operating system in VirtualBox. Alright, so we're here on the VirtualBox website right now, and we're on the downloads page. You'll need to download the distribution that's right for your host operating system. So if you're running a Windows host, you'll want this one. If you're running a Mac host, you'll want this one. If you're running a Linux distribution or a Solaris distribution, you want these. Note with the Linux distributions, it breaks down further into the types of or flavors of Linux, the distributions themselves. So you can come into this screen if you're using Linux and get the one specific to your host operating system. It's also important to mention on the download screen that you'll want to get the Oracle VM VirtualBox extension pack. It's specific to VirtualBox. It doesn't really matter what your operating system is. They're all the same download, so you'll want to get this and install that as well. So moving forwards, we'll assume that you've installed VirtualBox and that you have the extension packs installed. Okay, and let's go ahead and take a look at our VBox console. So in our VirtualBox console here, we have down the left side, we have a list of all of our machines grouped, and we have a display of those specifics for each of those machines on the right-hand side here. There's some other tools, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time going on a tour through VirtualBox. The purpose of this video is really to get you up and running as quickly as possible with a guest operating system. So to do that, we're going to click New. And we have a little window that pops up here. This is where the magic kind of happens. We're going to give our new operating system a name. I'm working with OpenSUSE today, so we're going to use SUSE for the name. You'll notice it knows Linux and OpenSUSE. You can pick your Linux or your Windows or your Mac OS, essentially pick your operating system from the type and then specify the distribution or version, which in this case is OpenSUSE 64-bit. Okay, and that's going to give it some of the information it needs to get started. So let's say next. All right, we're going to assign some RAM here. Just note that the green bar is telling you how much you can safely assign. This pink zone is a little bit less safe. You might get away with it. Once you get into this red zone, you're eating up RAM that the system needs to run, and it will definitely degrade performance. I like to give my boxes around 8 gigs of RAM. Let's say next. Okay, it wants us to provide a hard drive for this. We're going to create a new virtual hard disk. VDI for VirtualBox Disk Image. This can be confusing at first, but it's actually it's a nice little option. You know, if you're building a VirtualBox for production system, then you'll want to use fixed size. But for testing, you know, where you're creating and destroying your boxes, dynamically is nice because they create very quickly. The problem with a dynamically allocated file system in a production environment is that essentially you may overfill your hard drive. If you have several guest OSs all set dynamically, they start out as, you know, a little space on your hard drive, but as the containers grow, so does the space that they're using on your hard drive, and collectively they may overgrow the hard drive. So, you know, a 10 gig fixed hard drive occupies, or sorry, a 10 gigabyte fixed size drive will occupy 10 gigabytes on the host operating system, whereas a 10 gigabyte dynamically allocated drive will only allocate the amount of space that the container is actually using. So if your operating system takes up 1 gig, then the drive's going to appear as 1 gig, even though it can grow to the maximum size. So just keep note of that. We're doing testing here, so we're going to destroy this box shortly anyway, so I'm going to go with dynamically allocated, and it will create it instantly, whereas fixed has to write all the zeros. Okay, and we're going to tell it I want it to be 20 gigs, and we're going to create our box. And that's it. Box is created. All right. We're going to make some changes to the settings though, just to make sure that everything is just the way we need it to be. So we're going to click on the settings option. Okay. And in here, you'll see it's got the name of our box. Under the Advanced tab, I like to enable the shared clipboard and the drag and drop bidirectionally. This allows me to copy and paste from one, like my host OS, down to the guest OS or back. System, we've already assigned RAM. I have a habit of just removing that because it seems unnecessary anymore, but it's not necessary to remove it. Processors, I can give it up to 4 here, you'll see. Then it gets into eating up host resources. That's what that red is telling you. All right, everything else is good. Because we are using a GUI in our guest OS, we're going to assign some video memory. You can leave the rest of these settings as is. I will note that you can connect to your guest OS remotely through an RDP session, but we're not going to talk about that today. This is just really to get your guest OS installed and up and running. So let's carry on and look at storage. There's the VDI that we created. Here's our CD-ROM where we're going to want to mount our ISO for the installation. So there's my OpenSUSE ISO. We can leave all this the same. It knows that I'm on a Windows operating system for a host and that it's going to use the right host audio driver, etc. Last thing you're going to want to do to get yourself up and going, there's lots of other things you can do, but to get yourself started, I would just make this a bridged adapter. And you could, if you wanted to, add USB ports, but it's not necessary to get you up and going. So we're going to say OK here, and that should be about all we have to do to get our VirtualBox started. So we can go ahead and hit start here. And I've gone ahead and done the installation prior to the video, so I'm just going to fire up the box that I did that installation in. So I'm going to go ahead and say start. All right, once you're into your guest operating system, you're going to want to go to Devices, and it's in the top left of the VirtualBox window where your guest OS is running. You won't see the tab pop up in my VirtualBox, but you can see where my arrow is. It's right there. And when the tab opens up, the very last option is Insert Guest Edition CD. So you'll want to do that. If I open up my folder browser called Dolphin, I can go to my CD DVD drive, and in there I will have the necessary files to get me started. In the Linux world, you can just run the autorun.sh and pass your root password off, and it should go ahead and install the guest editions. You'll need to reboot after installing the guest editions in order for them to take effect, but essentially that is all there is to getting yourself started with a guest operating system in VirtualBox. Thanks for watching, and please like and subscribe.